Next, we'll have report of officers. Item number 1 is additional documentation requested at the October 13th, 2015 City Council meeting regarding an amendment to the Government Staffing Services, Inc. contract. A staff report will be from Michelle Green and Admin Services.
Good afternoon, Council. As we recall, I was here on October 13th presenting a staff report regarding an amendment to our Government Staffing Services contract. At that time, Council voted that I should bring back additional documentation supporting the information in the report, and so that's why we're here this afternoon. I have brought several documents, which I will briefly go through with you. The first item that I have attached is on page 62 of the agenda. And this is basically the CalPERS circular letter that talks about the various codes and items that would apply to a retired annuitant and their employment. In the fourth paragraph on that page, it does talk about sections 21220 through 21230, which I did reference in my original staff report on October 13th. However, it does also reference section 7522.56 of the PEPRA law, which is the code that references the minimum that I neglected to attach to the original staff report. I did attach the code itself, and that is on page 82 of the packet. The entire code from 7522 to 7522.74 is there, which is about 20 pages. But the specific reference, 7522.56, section D. In that section, it does say, the rate of pay for the employment shall not be less than the minimum nor exceed the maximum paid by the employer to other employees performing comparable duties. So that is the code that I did neglect to reference in my original staff report. In addition, on page 64, again back to the PERS circular, it does also discuss retiree compensation, and it is quoting that section as well, talking about the minimum and the maximum rate that the incumbent is required to receive. The other document I did attach was the email from the PERS post-retirement, what do they call it? Post-Retirement Administration Benefit Services Division. And this is what we did receive at the conclusion of the investigation. They did not give us a written letter. They summarized everything in an email. And in this email, it's page 91, if I didn't reference the page, sorry. Page 91 of the agenda packet. And she bullets 5 items. Number 3, as I did state in my staff report originally, she states the city should comply with the public pay schedule and pay Mr. Martin the minimum base salary, which was the $81.82. However, then going on to 4, she says if we agree, then the rate would be paid and reported retroactively back to the date he became the interim city manager. But then there's number 5. She said if the city does not agree, then we would not administratively reinstate Dean Martin based on this finding only, that his pay rate did not meet the minimum for this position. So then over on page 97, I wanted to be sure what that exactly meant. So the bottom half of page 97 is an email from me. I sent her, her name was Susan. I said, I have one more question for clarification because I know this will come up and I want to be clear. If the city does not agree to pay Mr. Martin and comply with the minimum pay rate, will there be any adverse impact to the city? Her response is at the top of the page. She talks about their laws regarding the retired annuitants, et cetera. authorize CalPERS to reinstate the retiree, and this reinstatement would actually would be what would cause the financial implications to the city. But she said, however, since we are the program area making the determination, and we are saying if the city will not comply with paying Dean Martin the minimum pay rate, then we will not reinstate him for that reason alone. So the short answer is no, not from us. So she's saying her area that reviewed this, the Post-Retirement Administration Benefit Services Division, their area would not pursue any additional fines, fees, punishment to the city if we did not choose to comply with this. So that was my only documentation from them. The rest of the packet basically is all of the emails going back and forth from 2014 when they started the investigation under Homer Croy, because he had been hired, they saw it in the newspaper. So all of these other pages were what was pulled as part of a public records request. And the two emails that I did reference, I pulled out of there for ease of finding them so we could go over them. But there are several emails back and forth, documents back and forth. But these items that I just went over were items that I should have attached to the staff report to be more clear and to properly reference the government code that I was trying to cite as the reasoning for the action we were bringing forward. And that concludes my report, unless you have questions or would like to go over some other documents in the packet.
Okay. We thank you for your report and all the copious documents that we have here. We'll start with Councilmember Miller. Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you for this report. For those in the audience who do not know what we're talking about, let me summarize where this all came from. At the last meeting, there was a request by the staff that we increase the pay of Dean Martin, our previous interim city manager who has just resigned, by $20,000. The reason for that was that Mr. Martin was hired by an interim company, Munitemp, I believe, and we paid that company $96.75, 100, is that right? No, $96.75 per hour for Mr. Martin. That is a large amount of money. If we take a look at our city and ask how many people in the city make $96.75 per hour, I think that possibly Mr. Martin may raise his hand. I don't know if anyone else would. Maybe there are a few rich people in this country. But our city paid quite a bit of money for our city manager.
I apologize. If I may, I just trying to anticipate where this is going. The information about, if you're going down the path of information that was paid by Munitemps to Mr. Martin and the write-up and his compensation that he was getting from Munitemps, I would avoid that information. They have claimed that that is confidential corporate proprietary information. And we only received that information inadvertently through CalPERS.
Okay, I'll avoid mentioning that number. So I will simply say we have paid Munitemp $96.75 per hour. Mr. Martin accepted whatever Munitemp paid him, right? So at that point, everyone was happy. Okay. He then came back to us afterward and said, you have not paid me enough because Munitemp has not paid me enough, and therefore you should pay me more. Now let me use an analogy. Let's say that I hire a management company to do my gardening. And suppose I just say, I'll pay them $25 per hour to do my gardening. And then a year later, one of the workers comes to me and says, I only receive $5 an hour, which is less than minimum wage. I want more money. Well, I'll say, but I paid the management company $25. And he says, so what? I only got $5. Why don't you pay me more? And I say to him, why don't you go back to the management company and say, you didn't pay me enough? And he says, oh, well, they're tough and you're easy. You're a city, and everybody knows that cities pay anything you ask them. Well, what is the answer to that? Ridiculous. And that is the condition that I consider this city is in, that we have been asked to pay extra money because everyone thinks a city is easy. Well, I don't believe that a city should be easy. This is taxpayer money. In order for us to give taxpayers money to anyone, we have to look at it carefully, examine it carefully, and say, is that person truly entitled to that money? So that's my analysis of this. Based upon that analysis, the retirement community said, CalPERS said, that we do not have to pay Mr. Martin any money. They said that on August 13th. On August 26th, more than a week later, you wrote a letter to Rita, our human resources, and said, we will not pay any money to Mr. Martin because of the statement of CalPERS. And that should have been the end of it. And yet, on October 3rd, a staff report with your name on it came out saying we should pay Mr. Martin. I would like to know why the change in your attitude. When on October 26th, you said we will not pay him, and then on October 3rd, you said we should pay him. What changed your mind between those two?
It wasn't my mind that changed. When I sent the email to Rita, I was letting her know the decision of Mr. Martin not to pursue the issue. He said, no, we're not going to pursue this, we're just going to let it lay. He changed his mind. So I was relaying his decision to Rita at that particular time. His decision changed later on. I don't know why.
Okay, so the staff report was not your report. The staff report was the report of Mr. Martin, and you put your name on it instead of Mr. Martin?
Originally, yes, he wrote the draft report, which is in the public records request also, by the way. On page 156 was the original draft report that Mr. Martin did draft for Rita and I to sign. When I looked at the report, I felt that it did not convey the true happenings. You know, it didn't reference the investigation. It didn't reference the fact that PERS said we are not required to pay this. So I had heartburn with the terminology that was used in the original draft. So I did edit the draft report to the report that I actually felt comfortable presenting to council, because it did say you don't have to pay this. The original version to me did not convey that message to you. I did not feel that it fairly presented the situation to council. So I did edit his draft.
Okay, but still, that report says the staff recommends. And again, on August 26th, you said in your email that you did not recommend the payment. And the staff report on October 3rd said you recommend the change. And again, that change was because Mr. Martin told you to make that change?
He said he changed his mind, and yes, he wanted to pursue it. He wanted to take it forward to council. It was his decision to bring it forward to council.
Okay, but you did not tell us that it was Mr. Martin's. You said that it was a staff report written by you.
Because literally, yes, I basically, if you look at the original draft, literally, I almost reworded the whole thing. There was very little, because like I said, I didn't feel comfortable the way it was presented. Literally, yes, I wrote the staff report. I typed it, literally, I did.
Well then,
Yes.
then why did you change your mind from August 26th to October 3rd?
Well, I didn't change my mind. It wasn't my opinion. I just said, Rita, we will not be going forward with this. It wasn't my idea. I was conveying what I was told. Mr. Martin told me we will not be going forward this. I just forwarded that exact same information to Rita. It wasn't my opinion. It wasn't my feeling. It wasn't whether I agreed with it. I was just conveying what he said. He said, we will not be going forward with this. So I said, Rita, we will not be going forward with this. That's all I said in the email to Rita.
Okay. Now, I do not wish to pursue the report, but again, we should have to be careful in the future then, when it says staff, we have to ask specifically who on the staff actually wrote that or authorized that, and not the person who has their signatures on it. Thank you.
Councilmember Moyer?
Just one quick thing. According to what I'm reading in all these emails, and I told you what I had to do to get them in order, I cut them all up and put them in the proper order. this thing goes all the way back to July. And I'm wondering why we didn't hear about it until October. That's my primary question.
Well, I believe Mr. Martin wasn't going to pursue it, so there was nothing to bring forward. I mean, he was the city manager. It was his decision.
So is it safe to assume then that as he came close to leaving us, he decided, well, maybe I'll try to get the 20,000?
Yeah, I don't know what triggered the change in decision. I don't know specifically what triggered it, but yes, there was definitely a change in heart. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Peterson?
I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to pick up where George just left off at. And one of the questions, he says, why didn't we hear about this sooner? But a bigger question than that is that in going back through all of the emails, and for the record, this is my record request. So when we talk about the record request, it was my record request. So in going back through the records, I never saw one email from a city attorney. So we have a legal issue, we have legal opinions, we have the possibility of lawsuit, we have all these legal ramifications. Can you tell me why we never consulted our city attorney?
The only reason I could say is that nobody, I want to say, for instance, I deal with the IRS regularly on several issues. The IRS, the EDD, other government agencies on a regular basis. Every time they send correspondence to us and we deal with certain issues, it's not seen as a legal issue. Normally, the higher-ups, which in this case, the city manager, because he was also the ASD, you present these issues to them, they make those determinations. I would say that Mr. Martin didn't feel the need or didn't see it as a legal issue at the time.
Sometimes we as children don't want to tell our parents things because they won't give us the answers we want to hear. When you presented the staff report on the 13th to council, did you feel that you had a fiduciary duty and responsibility to present all the facts and information to council?
Yes, and in a fair manner that presented both sides, that there was a choice, that it wasn't mandatory to do one action. Yes, I did.
Do you feel that you did that, that you performed your duties in a fiduciary manner and provided us the proper information?
Not without the proper documentation. No, I do feel I lacked in that area, most definitely.
And your staff report?
Correct. The attachments, the code, you referenced the code. I did not attach the other code. I did not attach the email. Yes, I should have done those things.
When you, in going through the record request, I found 3 staff reports. The original staff report that was sent from Sonia to you and Rita, a second staff report that was sent to you and Rita, and then your third and final draft version. Mm-hmm. So the 2 staff reports, I'm assuming that from what you said, the original staff report was prepared by Dean, version 1, sent from Sonia to you and Rita. You did some editing, sent it back to Dean. He did some more editing and sent it back to you. Is that the way that it went on version 2?
No, he did version 1. He made some additional edits to version 2, and then I edited version 3, the one that came to the staff report.
He approved version 3?
Yes, I took it in and I said, I didn't agree with your report. I rewrote it. Please review it. He did review it. He said, you're right. This is a much better report. It does present more fairly the information. Present your report.
And what was your reason for not presenting the original report?
Because the original one, to me, didn't talk about the investigation. It didn't say specifically, you have a choice. You know, PERS is not going to persecute or charge any fees. To me, it slanted it in a certain direction. It almost made it, to me, in my personal opinion, that it slanted the decision. It didn't present fairly both sides of the equation, that there was a choice according to what we had.
Do you have your staff report in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Can
Page
you show me?
177.
Yeah. Can you show me in your staff report where it says the city does not have to pay the money? Where does it say that?
Under background, the third paragraph down.
Read it to me.
It says, however, in this one instance, CalPERS would not implement any punitive actions if we chose not to comply.
Okay. But if we chose not to comply, not that CalPERS says we do not have to do it. So you're saying it was a choice.
It was a
CalPERS
choice.
specifically said we do not have to pay.
Right. They said we should,
Okay.
but you don't have to. They said you should, but if you don't, we won't charge you anything.
Correct. Do you think that it was a conflict of interest for Dean to prepare this, present it to you, and have you give it to council requesting a $20,000 bonus for him?
Well, I don't know if it's a conflict of interest because he can't present matters on his, I think if he would have got up here and presented it, it would have definitely been a conflict of interest. Normally, I would say it would be the director, but we're missing a director. Normally, I think it would have went to the director level instead of deputy director level. But somebody else besides him, logically, would have had to present it to council. He chose Rita and I guess, because we're deputy HR and deputy finance. Normally, the administrative services director covers HR and finance.
Were you ever told not to specifically seek the advice of the city attorney?
No.
Now, Dean has the habit, or all city managers have the habit, of discussing agenda items with each and every council member individually. So I don't meet with the city manager. I don't know if Ed does. I know that the other three do. Prior to presenting your original staff report to council, did you have any discussion about this subject matter with the mayor?
Originally, back when Dean decided not to pursue the matter.
Okay.
Not
And what
when
did
this
the mayor
became a new
say?
issue. She said if he didn't want to pursue the matter, that's fine.
Okay, then how about when it resurfaced after August 23rd or whatever? Let me see the date. August 26th. When you sent the email to Rita, August 26th at 2:04 p.m., here is the last email. We will not, in capital letters, be pursuing any pay increase for Dean. There are no adverse consequences to the city for not doing so. Signed, Michelle Green. So after that date, and when this serpent raised its head again in October, did you discuss this with the mayor at that time?
No, there was no further discussions. Like I said, it was just Dean, for whatever reason, changed his mind and said, I'd like you to present this to council.
Okay, because this was up for the mayor to sign, right?
I'm sorry?
The mayor was going to sign the amendment to the contract. So I would assume
I
that she
didn't
would
work
have
on
had
the
knowledge, right?
amendment, so I'm not sure. I did not work on the actual contract portion.
Okay.
I'll answer that. I would not have signed any kind of agreement or to the contract unless it had been approved by the council.
I guess I'm done, but I want to give a final statement here. Based on the answers and everything that I've received and the information that I've been given in my public record request, that I'd like to recommend to the city manager that a formal investigation be initiated into this incident, because this has got the same symptoms of Bell. This is a scandalous attempt to get money out of the city. I don't understand how a contracted employee, that's not even an employee of the city, but a contractor, can decide that he wants a $20,000 pay raise after it was submitted not to, and then all of a sudden decide on his own and direct staff to create a staff report and come forward with it. So I'd like to see an IA, something that comes forward and gets the truth out of the whole matter, because this cannot, this type of conduct cannot continue. And now I'm done.
Okay. We'll go to Councilmember Welsh. Okay, I do have a question in regards to, I know we've used Munitamps for Homer Croy. We used it for Dean Martin. Have we had a practice of using Munitamps in the past?
I looked in the system. I believe the first time we used them, like in recent years, I believe was Homer Croy. I didn't go back really far, but I believe Homer Croy is the first recent experience we've had with them.
Because when I look at the documentation, it looks like there's still an issue regarding Homer Croy that has to be resolved, but also it looks like when we first set up the contract for Dean Martin, it looked like everything was okay, and then things went sideways. We've used acting city managers, acting staff in the past. Have we used other temporary services for that?
Romo we've used.
For this
I don't know if we've used temp agencies. I know we had Ricadio. I think he was direct. I can't remember names, but I don't know that we've actually used a temp agency. I'd have to research that. But like I said, in this one, the difference with this is that the PERS laws went into effect more recently. So dealing with other companies, we may not have had this issue because the laws changed more recently.
Because it seems like maybe we need to have some kind of protocol through the council regarding when we hire, especially if we do wind up using a third party, that third party is responsible for anything that is required through CalPERS, if we can do something like that, so we don't have this ever come up again.
Indeed, I was having that discussion yesterday with our personnel team, and one of the problems that we had with this contract was that we never received the Munitemps contract. And contracts like this should have a provision in them that protects, and even if we as a city are directly on the hook for CalPERS payments, there should at the very least in these types of agreements be an indemnification clause so that they have to reimburse us for these types of issues when they come up.
Yeah, okay. And then, Councilmember Miller, you had your light on. Did you have another question? And Councilmember Peterson?
Okay.
Yes, this is a fairly small item, $20,000, but the reason that I take this very seriously is that when we receive a staff report, we have to assume that the staff is interested in the benefit of the city. And this staff report clearly was not in the benefit of the city, it was in the benefit of a staff member. And as a result of that, it casts a question on every staff report. And that is why we are both, I think, the whole council is very, very concerned about this item. We want to be sure that if a staff report is given to us, it is prepared solely with the interests of the city and not anyone else.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Peterson?
The one thing I will say is, and the public does need to know, that the city, in some respects, could have been on the hook for the money, and Michelle is exactly right. That's not false. And when the city council, way back when all of us got together, and I think we hired Homer Croy, and I think the public has seen, probably if you've read the agenda, There's a formula that CalPERS uses as a 173.33 in order to get the hourly rate for the annuitant to be paid. So the council had set up originally a salary for the city manager of $200,000 a year. So for this interim, you would take that $200,000, divide it by 12, gives you $16,000 a month, and divide that by 173.33, and you get to $96.15 per hour. So that's what the annuitant, and that's what we contracted to Munitemps for. However, you could look at the $96 and say, okay, CalPERS says that our interim city manager should be making $81 an hour, and he's contracted with Munitemps for less money, and because I'm not allowed to say. Don't worry, city attorney. I see you. But he contracted for less money. CalPERS says we're allowed to pay $81. So you could look at it and say, all right, well, they're saying based on $170,000 a year, because that's what our job flyer says with Bob Murray and Associates for the contracting of a new city manager. But we also have to take a look at, is their commission schedule excessive? Personally, I think their commission schedule is excessive when they're looking at a 40% split rate or whatever, 60-40 split rate, whatever it is that they're at. Pardon me? I'm saying approximate. I don't know the exact number. I'm just saying approximate. So with that, there's certainly enough money in our contracted rate of $96 an hour where you could pay the annuitant $81 and they could pocket $15 for every hour that the annuitant's here. And at $40 an hour for 960 hours times 2, so actually he was here for basically 48 weeks at $15 an hour at 2,080 hours, I think they made a pretty good chunk of change. Personally, in my business, I would love to make $15 an hour off of an employee.
And
But-
that's just an example.
As an example.
Right.
Exactly. Example. Yeah, I have no hard figures. Hypothetically speaking. And, but, so, and I understand what it is that you were saying, but the problem is the way that it all came forward. And that's the part that was bad. I understand the whole PERS process. I understand the PERS circular 200-002-14. I understand the government codes. I read the PERS retirement guide, and on page 9, what it said as far as the consequences if a city doesn't abide by it. So I'm very well versed on the subject matter now. I will never be this versed on the flume, but I certainly did on this one.
I can help you.
Yeah, no, thank you. But, so anyway, I just wanted the public to know that, yeah, there is a possibility that later down the road, in a PERS audit or whatever the case may be, this could come back. And it's not, even though it's dead in the email, it could stick its ugly head up down the road. So that's, I'm done.
Okay.
Or I
Thank you.
say something the attorney doesn't like.
Do you have any other questions from the council? Councilmember Miller?
I would simply like to make, I don't know if it's a motion, but I think we should all recognize that we do not want to get any further annuitants from Munitemp.
Well, that's why we voted to cancel the contract. And then I know the question came up about doing a review, so I think maybe with the chief and legal, you can kind of tell us where we need to go.
So council actually does not need to take formal action in order to initiate a review. Our new interim city manager has the discretion to initiate that. There is one other question that I have, and I believe this is just a receive and file report for now. But one other question that came up is that at the last meeting on this item, there were essentially three aspects to your motion. Number one was to reject the request for the $20,000. Number two was to bring back these materials. And number three was to get a legal analysis of the various CalPERS issues and other legal issues pertaining to this. After Mr. Martin left, I chose not to start expending substantial legal resources because I wasn't sure if the issue may be moot with him gone, but I wanted to find out from the council. I didn't want to expend legal resources to put together a formal opinion and start that process unless the council still wants to go down that path.
Okay, the pleasure of the council. Councilmember Peterson, did you have anything?
I think the legal issue has been discussed already. I think it's already been put forth as far as the circular government code, and I think it's pretty much well understanding. I still want to see an investigation come to find out how it got here and why it got here in its present form.
Well, we'll refer that to our acting city manager to follow up on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Moyer? Nothing? Councilmember Miller? Councilmember Welsh? Okay. Thank you. And that was a receive and file, so there is no voting on this particular item.